I would die if I have to work every daily in that ugly room. I would die. I would just do something else. I don't know.
Okay.
As a wine lover, you don't fall in love with the taste of the wine. You fall in love with the story, with the winery, with the bottle label, with the whole spirit around it. And the winery is so important of it. I think that every winery has become a stage. So it needs to be picturesque, it needs to be Instagrammable. There are always exceptions, but you want to see a clean winery where everything is tidy. And it can be beautiful, it can be ugly. Beautiful wine can be made in super ugly cellar if the winemaker has a good soul, and vice versa. And a good winery doesn't say that you have a good wine. Of course, the white tiles are the best to clean, and if you put like white tiles in every single corner of the winery, it looks like a hospital. And the wine is, you don't want to drink that wine in a way, even if it's crazy good.
Hi everybody, this is Agnes from No Sediment and welcome to No Sediment Wine Podcast. Today my guest is architect, a winemaker and industrial designer Mārtiņš Pīlēns.
Well, hello everyone.
Hi, how are you?
I'm super good. Thanks for asking. So good to be back in Riga, to be here in your podcast. Always been watching it and finally here, so it's
Yes.
a real honor.
Good. It's also an honor from my side. So before we start to talk about the architecture, the winery architecture, I wanted to maybe ask you, could you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us about your wine journey and why are you fit to talk about this very exciting topic?
It's a good question. I mean, you made me fit. So who am I? I'm Mārtiņš Pīlēns. I'm born in Latvia, but living in Europe, so I consider myself European. I'm architect by my education, studied architecture at Bauhaus University in Weimar. But my first job as an architect was to design a wine shop, where you also worked. And by doing that, I understood my passion for wine is just growing. And after one moment, I was leading the wine purchase portfolio for that shop. And we opened another one. So I was really infused with this wine bar. And then I started also as a designer. I saw that there's a lot of bad wine shelving out there, and instead of buying something wrong or what I didn't like, that I started to work on my own brands. So this is how my wine design was born. And I'm now industrial designer, designing furniture for the wine industry. That means a basket to carry 4 bottles. That means a storage, similar like shelving like this, but more minimal, more Bauhaus infused. So I'm architect, I'm winemaker. Yes, I'm winemaker as well. And I'm industrial designer, but industrial design is what occupies my daily life for 95%. But always the question is wine. And I'm a winemaker, so yes, I studied winemaking back in 2013, just at a Sunday school of wine, etc. Just because in all this journey of buying wine, I started to see that you get like easily snobbery, that you like, I don't like this. So I wanted to dig deeper and go back to winemaking and see how hard it really is to make a wine. So I did that. I made my first Riesling 2013, and now this October, most likely my first ever champagne is coming out. So this is made in collaboration with Etienne Calzac. So I don't own a winery, I don't own a vineyard, but I'm collaborating with Etienne Calzac for my first 555 bottle cuvée.
Oh, and he's going to be here soon as well, no?
He's going to be here soon. That's why I'm also coming here as his tour guide to Riga.
Oh, all right. Okay, but so winery architecture.
Yeah.
So historically, it was primarily shaped by function.
Yes.
And yet many historic winery buildings are magnificent still today. So you mentioned the Bodegas Ysios, and for me, they look impressive, like these cathedral-like spaces, with these tall buildings, soaring ceilings. So what were the key functional requirements of the wineries they had to meet in the past?
I think that the Jerez region in general is like super exciting for an architect, for a wine lover, for a design lover in general, like connoisseur, because we focus on the soleras, the barrels are being made and now structured in the cellars, and this is basically the main message. And then of course we have the tastings, how it is. But I was there, 15 years ago, I was so impressed by the windows. So if you think back on every bodega in Jerez. You have the small windows up there, and they are being opened only when the one wind is coming. And basically the wind is being used to cool down the room, to cool down the cellars, and also the solera, that the barrels are like built in these structures that the wind is circulating nicely. And that was the moment I really understood, wow. I mean, there's no big names in that Jerez buildings. There's all no name, look like churches, look like sheds, etc. But they're following that. There's a function, shed like covered with the bricks and some roof, and then you have to open with the small windows open and up. And for me, this is something really is what an architecture should do, should understand what the wind, what the geography, what the climate is bringing, and just to shape it. That's it. If the architecture, is it wine shop, is it restaurant is coming, here's my signature, here I look like, this is my suit, I want that your winery looks exactly like me, and I don't care how your wine tastes, it just should carry my signature because you're asking me to do the job, then this is wrong. And this is basically like 80% the cases in architecture. It is the case. So we know a couple of cases in Spain and everything where star architects have built wineries and everyone is super good. Every single magazine post is being made, but the winemaker is crying, isn't it? So
I know some of those stories. Yes, that's true.
Yeah. And I think that the architecture should always serve the function, serve the client, serve the need, and then serve a little bit the signature of the architect, because you have to do what you know, of course, but it is not the only thing. So, and I think the good architecture is like a good doctor. It's not like saying, try this, but he listens. Why is your back pain? Why do you, I don't know, what's your problem? And they say, oh, basically you need only this one. To change only, just stop drinking water so much, whatever. I don't know. When the architecture is the same, yeah. And I think this Jerez, this is no other region in general in the world is more impressive, because every single winery is working with this. Because they're really like saving a lot of air conditioning just by opening these windows and closing them down. And of course, Levante and Poniente winds, they are really important also for the vineyards. And of course, if it's important in the vineyards, it's also in the winery. Just to break it down, so basically the bodegas in Jerez are tall buildings because there's a lot of wind up there and there's small windows, and the cool wind is becoming really in, and it's almost like a chimney, the whole architecture. And when the wind is in the building, it's almost like circulating, and then the barrels are built like that. And so that's it. That's the architectural function.
All right, but that's pure function then. There was no idea of design, introducing.
There's always been idea of design, because back in the 16th century, in 17th, in Renaissance, etc., every single carpenter, he was doing only the floors or the doors, etc., but they knew their canon. So they were like a Bible of what we do, what fits to this age and what fits to this building. They knew the rules. So they like, whenever they ask you, do me a door handle, he did it, but it was almost like in the context of the time, and it was a piece of art, because he was doing that skill as it will be the most important job. We were joking, architect, designer, they are not the same equality, but then also I said the joke is the bus driver is also like a profession. And if you do it nicely and the best from your heart, it's the best thing you can do it. And also that carpenter did the door handle according to the canon, and it was the full piece of like the big puzzle, and it aligned together. Now you just go to the carpenter, ask the door handle, what do you want? Renaissance, Art Nouveau, you want the modern, you want something cheeky, you want Rick Owen style, whatever, and you don't know how the kitchen will be, and everything starts not to match together. But back in the times, there was only one frame. It evolved during the time, it changed in the time, but that's why everything was piece of art in the end of the day. And even the simple bodega, every single carpenter, every single construction worker was working in the code, more or less, of that time. So that looks like simplicity, but nicely coded.
So if we look at these historical function requirements, which of them do you think are still fundamentally shaping the winery architecture now, and which new requirements have emerged in the modern wine?
I would say the modern wine world is as it should have been like ages ago. And I think we have the grower movement. First of all, in the champagne, because that's we call a grower champagne as a grower, but basically every single winemaker is a grower in first hand. Back in the days, there was a merchant and the winery or a vineyard. And basically the merchant was selling the wine. He needed the shop And he didn't care about the vineyards, he didn't care about barrels. Now the grower wants to show the full cycle, and I think that has really changed, because a winery, how it has been built in the 80s and 90s, is not serving a young champagne maker anymore, because they don't look for representation. They're sold out like 2 years in advance, etc. They don't need a sales room. And basically what they're doing, and what you're going to the winery, is because you want to see the vineyards, the barrels, how he's working, and not how he's selling. So basically the whole aspects of baking have become more transparent and visible, and more important in the architecture of the winery. And not the tasting room with a big table, etc., but more the barrel and just walk through it. So this is the major shift. Still in Bordeaux, you have the sales room, the merchant room, and there's the barrel, chai, etc. You go in there, and that's about it. So, but I would say that's the biggest change. So that we want to show the full cycle of winemaking and trying to make it most transparent as it is. And because they have nothing to hide anymore today. Back in the 70s, 80s, they were adding that and that to the wine. Of course, there was the laboratory and the black room you shouldn't see. Today, basically everything you can see.
Yeah, that's true. I sometimes seen like loads and loads of sugar as well.
Exactly. I mean, champagne is sugar. So in every single winery in Champagne, you have like a room just for sugar. And it's a shock, of course, but this is the fermentation. Second fermentation is started by sugar in most of the cases. Yeah, it's just no big deal. So it's part of the thing. You have to understand it. But I think this is the main essence of the winery. So it's becoming a laboratory, and you want to show it. As soon as you have to start this, or you can't see that barrel, so it means, you're doing something like crazy, or you're not buying it. And today the transparency is everything, because you have seen the winery in Instagram, you have seen it on Facebook, you have seen it everywhere, and this is the main thing. And I feel like sketchy, if I go to the winery and they don't show me the vineyard or don't show me the barrel room, so I understand, okay, this guy is not taking that serious. So I'm not interested in the meeting room and how big your car is or whatever. I want to see the purity. I want to see the backbone of the work. And I think you have to feel it. Because I also think that as a wine lover, you don't fall in love with the taste of the wine. You fall in love with the story, with the winery, with the bottle label, with the whole spirit around it. And the winery is so important of it. And if I'm using new barrel, old barrel or big barrel, so it's part of the story, and it really is making. So if I just choose one of these, between the 3-4, of course I have my favorite, but basically I'm like devoted. This winery style I really support, I love it, and I will try it now and then. And Tuesday I don't like it, but on Thursday I like that exactly, and it always changes. It's not like one taste. My life is not really boring. Also, your food menu is not boring, so you always need like shifts when you need to know the full story.
Okay, since you touched upon this subject, I will try to focus on a bit more now. So you mentioned about the visitors. So historically, wineries were these closed, largely production-focused spaces. So how did the role of the visitor change the winery design? So you briefly mentioned, touched upon it.
Yeah, I think back in the days, the visitor was the buyer.
Okay.
Who was there coming and just to buy like a barrel and then resell it or bottle it or whatever. Then back then there was a wine tourism was born, but I think the wine tourism really started like late 90s, maybe early 2000 or something like that. And now, of course, we have the influencers and everyone is coming like, I have like 2 days somewhere in region, let's see a winery. And of course, that simple person is coming and wants to taste the wine. Sometimes it's not want to see it, but I think some of the perspective is, it has changed that you can't hide anything. You should not hide anything, and you should welcome everyone because you never know who is making that big impact. Sometimes it's the buyer. You need to have access. Of course, he needs a VIP tour, access to back vintages and taste things like this. And then you have just a regular influencer coming in, and he basically needs to just see your smile, and your 2 best cuvées, and etc. Isn't probably not always caring about the vintage depth. Needs an old picture. So I think that every winery has become a stage. So it needs to be picturesque. It needs to be Instagrammable. First of all, I think we should not forget that everything is postable, likable, and this creates some money in a way.
So do you think that in this aspect, the function of the winery have somehow maybe changed now? That maybe before it was just serving the function of winemaking, and now it also serves the function of marketing and representation?
Yeah, I think that back in the days we had the marketing and the winemaking, and today both is compact together.
Okay.
Especially, I think, if you think of grower champagne, so there's no marketing campaign. So all marketing is that the actual making of the wine has become the marketing, and I think this is how I like it, how I love it, because this is basically where the quality and passion and purity is born, and I think this has to be shown. So basically, we have shifted the camera focus from stage to the backstage, and backstage has become the main stage now, and needs to be now a little bit more beautiful and a little bit more clean. Again, clean cellar and unclean cellar. I mean, think of Bodegas Lopez Heredia. I think a clean cellar like this is impossible. So it's this mold everywhere, and it belongs to the story. And if you know the story, it just makes sense. So you don't expect anything else. You go in Napa Valley and you see something like super dirty, molded winery. You think, wow, what is wrong here? You expect some laboratory cleanness and something like this. So it's always like, there are always exception, but you want to see a clean winery where everything is tidy, and it can be beautiful, it can be ugly. Beautiful wine can be made in super ugly cellar if the winemaker has a good soul, and vice versa. And a good winery doesn't say that you have a good wine.
So I personally had a very interesting experience, almost like theme park experience in Marqués de Riscal, where, from the very parking where you park your car, you go through this curated experience and you end up in a gift shop. So how do you think architect can influence this experience? Is it over-designed, or maybe?
Well, I think that you mentioned it's over-designed, but it's serving the food. It's giving you the Disneyland feeling in your entertainment. You go, you make a picture here and here and here because you're excited about the colors of the roof, of the shapes, how you go, and bam, you're in the front of the shop and want to buy the 30-euro bottle. But in a way, so if you go back, you have pictures how beautiful it was, and then you ask yourself, how was the wine? Oh, whoa, how was the wine? I forgot it. So I saw the winery. This was interesting, and I just forgot it with the wine. So in this case, it is serving the tourist. It's entertaining you, but it's over-designed because the wine has stepped back in the second one. And this is my philosophy. And we architects are like many, and we have different philosophies, etc. My philosophy is that wine comes first. Design has to support it, frame it, help it, and then being itself. It's almost like a silent luxury. It doesn't mean a big difference what this suit is from. Yeah, so it's just black. Mm-hmm. For me, it's from somewhere. For you, it should sign. There's no logo for you, so whatever, you don't care. And I think the architecture is the same. Wine first, and then you should be like a functional model, like putting the wine on the stage where it's needed, taking the attention down where it's not needed, where you have a beautiful view on the vineyards. Yeah, that's architecture. Then you make no barrels here, here's a viewing platform, etc. I think this makes me more proud. Okay. And at the same time, we have the winery Antinori, which is amazing. Antinori winery, you go there, you feel like a Gattaca movie, everything's, but you still remember the wine because that architecture is also very impressive, very there, but in a way, like a tone of material. In a way, it's more shaded, so the wine is still there. Yeah. Also not in the same proportion I would love to, but it's for sure much better, yeah. And then there's a winery I would call, it's La Closerie. It's a champagne winery in Gueux, run by Agnes and Jérôme Prévost. And they have 2 hectares of vineyard. They pull out a little bit of wine, the wine, mm-hmm. just to make place for the living house and the winery. And the winery, it's really in the vineyard.
Within the vineyard.
Yeah, he's like waking up with the view to the vineyard, is drinking his coffee with a view to the vineyard, and then going to the cellar and doing the same. And the same time, this is where the place where I saw that beauty of the Harris. And you have the vineyard, it's like an easy slope, and then you have the vineyard with a big window. and you have the barrel room, and you can slide it as a garage room, just also to bring some fresh air, just to evaporate and also give some cooling down the barrels. And at the same time, the wind is coming through the vineyard, going in it. So, I mean, how can you infuse the wind? But basically, the wind is coming through your wines and basically is carrying some atmosphere and bringing in the cellar. So brilliant, so simple. Just the wooden walls, etc. Black from outside, nothing. Simplicity pure, but so beautifully made, because it's really like opening the window in the barrel room and seeing the vineyard wines exactly where it's coming from. So it's like seeing the source. So here it was, here it's now in the barrel, and there's the magic in between is the winemaking, what happens and what divides. And I think this is the pure beauty.
That's very beautiful.
And of course, that is not the posh winery in making, like, because the layers of heavy or very, let's say, expensive architectural elements have been used. Simplistically structured down just for this emotional experience. And for me, I feel like happy there.
Okay. So do you have some more examples to share where you feel like the winery experience is more authentic? And maybe if you want to, you don't have to, but also some like not the best examples.
I think that there's a lot of wineries and have a good job. And I think those who are really out in the press, if you Google the best 10, or let's say the 10 most beautiful wineries in the world, you'll never see one authentic one. You will see the star architect ones, etc. You will see the Marquis Riscal winery, etc. It's still fantastic good. It's just not my personal taste, because I think the wine has to come first. And I think also the Klaus Preisinger, he built his winery really, like, I think even 20 years ago. And as a young boy back in the days, he really changed the way how the wave of winery architectures were there. It's basically a big shed, which is representing, of course, a little bit his I would say lifestyle with surfboards, etc. And it's basically giving the big balcony, which is overlooking the vineyards, and then big barrel room where you can just experiment, etc. And that a little bit decorative shed, but it's basically captured. And I think it was a starting moment when many other cool wineries started to be built, especially in Austria. And they understood that the winery doesn't have to be like so crazy expensive. It just has to be expressive and good. And I think also, you know very well, is Enrico Revetto, the winery near Serralunga de Alba. This is my first winery which I have built, and also the only one which I have built. So that's also fun in a way. And that's also where my journey started with my wine design. So the first wine racks were built for Enrico Revetto, and out of that the wine brand was born. So, and I think he has also like not the most beautiful shed up there, but the most amazing barrel room. And then he has like an old building which was like completely lost and didn't know what to do it. So he turned it into the tasting room, into the shop, and then he had a small windows. But if you look out at the window, you see the Serralunga Castle, one of the most picturesque views in Barolo. Barolo in general is very picturesque, but the Serralunga Castle is so crazy. So what we did, we just basically had to cut the windows much bigger, so you always have the connection to it, because it's the wine from Serralunga de Alba. You're in the tasting room, you taste it, and you want to see over the vineyards, you see the castle. So it's really the place of genius loci. So genius loci is if the place, the atmosphere is sensing or transporting the sense of the place, what it should be. Yeah, is it material? Is it the spirit? So it doesn't look like Napa, it doesn't look like Germany, it looks like Piedmont, and it should taste like Piedmont, and should be Piedmont on every single detail. And the same in the barrel room also. We just had like no windows at all. We just opened the windows, and now from the barrel, the vat fermentation room. I mean, the vat is not looking at it, but the vat could see the Serralunga Castle, so also sense the place. And I think it's beautiful. And of course, the winemaker is there. If you work in a nice environment, you feel more happy. If your warehouse has artwork, you feel more happy, you feel more like a museum. If your warehouse is just bumped with the cardboard boxes and with shelving, you're like, warehouse work, I just don't want to do it. But just make warehouse into an art experience, and you happily do there. It's the same bus driver. If you're just driving the bus with all your love, you're the best person in the world, because you're doing a job what you do. And I think the winery should always, every single corner should be beautiful, well designed, and in a way cozy or homey. And and I think also sometimes back in the days I was teaching also about champagne. I know there's a Grand Cru, and there's a Premier Cru, and there's a Village. And I also used now and then the joke that What's the difference between the Grand Cru vineyard and the village vineyard, or let's say Premier Cru vineyard? It's like going in to your vacations. You get your hotel room next to the ocean. One room has a balcony with a view to the ocean. So that's the Grand Cru, where you feel happy, where you feel inspired by where you are. The other room is just facing like the backyard courtyard, and what you see is like delivery entrance, yeah. And you know there is a sound of the ocean, but you don't see it, and that's the premier or even the non-classified vineyard. And if you get that key of that room, you're like, because you know what you could be, you don't feel happy, and you can't have the best vacations in that room because you know it can be different. And I think in winery we always, as an architect, have to see what the winemaker is overseeing, where we can cut the window, where we can place the barrels a little bit to make it the full experience. And also I'm a big fan that the barrels are not standing in the corners, that they're standing in the room, that you can walk around them, have like easy access to all the filling, etc. And also just see the room like a little bit better. The same like with the sofa. I would never put the sofa back in to the wall or in the corner. I would put it in the middle of a room so you feel more, and then just like here, you walk around, it's becoming like art object, a little bit more like a interior experience. And I think the winery should be the same.
Okay, so but I want to now go back to a bit less romantic idea of the winery, because it is filling a certain function, and that function, for example, is temperature. So one of them is temperature. So temperature is a critical at almost every winemaking stage: fermentation, barrel aging. So to what extent can architecture support a technical, cooling system, warming system?
200%. So that's the job of an architect and an engineer and in the architecture, just to serve the wine. And if that room needs to be chilled, it needs to be chilled. Beautifully or not beautifully, but it's the job. And back in the days, of course, we, as an architect, I studied a lot of books, and I studied in Germany. Germany is full of rules, and the windows have to be that thick and insulated and soundproof, and that and this and this and this. And then you look at these Mexican and Brazilian pavilions and houses, like, wow, crazy details, and windows open like this and no insulation. Architecture is so much more beautiful because you don't have this heavy layer of technical this and this and this. You can be pure. And of course, it's really true. So they have different climate in Mexico and Brazil, and they have different architecture expression. And so architecture in Germany and Brazil can never look the same. The same is in the winery. I mean, what you can do in your private house, you can't do in winery. So the barrel room needs to be, depending on your wine style, there are winemakers who want to keep the barrel room all year for 2 to 5 degrees. Of course, this needs... It needs to be in a cellar, and needs to be like a cooling and air conditioning. Of course, the CO2 footprint is not an easy one in that case, but it's you. If you have decided your barrel room has to be that cold, okay, that's your winemaking style. Mm-hmm. So you're taking that CO2 footprint in your, in your agenda, or you deal with that. And of course, an architect can't put it on the slope with the view and where the 40-degree sun is coming and shining in. So basically, you have to understand where and how to hide that, or what kind of levels of architecture to use it. There's this one Dominus winery in Napa Valley made by Herzog de Meuron, and it's really like in the slopes, and they're using the cages, the crates where the stones are in here. And sometimes they use these crates just to avoid that the land is sliding against too much rain or earthquakes or flood sliding down. You put it like and also in the terraces in Douro or Baja Valley, you use like these walls. And they use these walls as outside of the winery to give the shade and cooling down. And basically, they are reaching the same what we want to do with air conditioning, just by using the thick stones and giving the shadow, and then having the barrel room back there. Architect has the answer. Just let's make thin walls, and then put the biggest air conditioning in there, and job is done. Or you go like environmentally like sustainable and think of the solution how to do it. And if you need that chilled room, you think. And as an architect, that's your job. So that's your recipe. And not every architect is thinking of this, and this, but you should give an answer. And if you don't have creative solution, you go for a simple solution and have a big air conditioner.
Okay, another non-romantic topic, the workflow in the winery from grape reception to fermentation and aging. So how does that can be influenced by an architecture? architect.
Just by organizing the rooms. The same like a workflow in your kitchen. If you have like between the kitchen and the serving table have 5 sofas, then the workflow is a little bit always like either too slow or too long. And basically the workflow should be like easy and circulate. And I think either by gravity or just by circle. I think the best winery would probably be a circle where you just walk around and have like, the rooms where you access, because always making sure you have the shortest, not always in historical places or vineyard situations you have these options. But I think the workflow is the main thing what you design together with the winemaker. As an architect, you understand your workflow.
Yeah.
And then I go home or to my office and start to work around this workflow and build the winery. And then I look what is there, how can I put it? Is the workflow this ideal? Okay, we have 2 floors, and how I can convert this workflow up there and maybe use some gravity. And workflow is the keybone, also the backbone of the good project.
Okay, before we move on to the next one, a lot of people, especially when you go and visit wineries, they always mention gravity. So why is it important in the wineries?
In the winery, it's important for the winemaker, of course, who is like, the grapes are so fragile, and then he has a lot of harvesters coming with the hands fragiling, and basically they want to use the gravity that they don't have to crush the grapes and then turn the big pump and pump them up there, which always shocks the grapes. So basically they want to press and then have the barrel here, and when that barrel room needs to go another watt, so basically the watt is standing up there, you open open the door, so open the lid, and that is flowing down. So they don't want to use the pump electricity and shock the wine. So that's why the gravity is coming from. And if the wine is so fragilely made, so that's part of the workflow, and you have to understand where the grapes are being delivered. Most cases you deliver the grapes, you press the grapes, then you have it, the first juice more or less, you have to wait till the sediment is racking down, and then you convert the clear, transfer the clear juice to the barrel. It can be in 1 floor, or the best you have in 2 layers, because we said down there you have a cooler, and the barrels needs to be over the year in a cooler effect. So basically that's the gravity aspect is needed, where it's important when it's possible. If it's not possible, you always have the pump. And most of the winemakers have the pump, and that's the biggest tool what you use, but they don't want to use it too much. And I think it also depends on the winemaker, how much he cares about this aspect or this aspect, what is making his wine so and so. But the workflow is the main.
Okay, now I'm thinking in Bordeaux, Linge-Bage, and Petit Clos, they have elevators for grapes only. Because of that,
exactly. So they didn't had probably the solution just to go like this, and they have the, let's say, an expensive gravity, but they have it, and they're not pumping, and they're reaching what they want. And this is again, we need in workflow, we need that, and we need that gravity. We can't reach it, so we reach with the elevator. And this is again, the architect or the engineer is coming with his solution, sometimes with a big price tag, sometimes with the easy price tag, but this is the job of an architect. And winemaker sometimes knows the answers, or what? No, he has to tell you exactly how he has. The only problem in winemaking is, you tell me how you make your wine today. You don't know how you're going to make your wine in 20 years. If you are like super traditional bodega or whatever, you more or less know, but the last 15 years have shown that winemaking has changed like completely. And the old wineries, they basically can't serve the good like natural winemaking way.
Okay.
And I think that the winery has to change, and also has to be. That's why I said also this Klaus pricing in winery, which is basically a big anger, is giving all the freedom, giving a little bit of gravity, giving the amphora rooms, etc., etc. Back in the days, we had the barrel rooms. Now we have the amphoras. How to bring the amphora in the rooms? In some of the wineries, you go in, you think like how this 20 hectoliter tank was brought in. Yeah, they have to cover the roof, then bring with the crane, and then weld it together, etc. You can't move it. So these are a couple of decisions are like there forever.
Yeah.
And this is the tricky thing, So you can decide on something to be there for good or forever if you're like 100% sure you're going to use it like next year, 10 years, and 20 years exactly in the same way. This is a challenge that limits your winemaking possibilities in a way.
Significantly, yeah. All right, so another unromantic topic, hygiene. I always told when I read some lectures, I always told that like those wineries that I have visited, you can eat out of the floor, but you should also think about it when you build it, that it is easy to clean, that it is not material, I guess, that, absorbs everything and colors.
This is how I became a winemaker. I was in a harvest with Etienne Calzac, and I was cleaning the floor. Every time you receive grapes, the grapes are there, and by own weight, it starts like to press itself, and it's running. And then the juice is sticky. After the 5 minutes, you have some flies in there. It's basically sugar on the floor, and so you have to clean. And it's impossible to think how much water is needed to make wine, because cleaning the barrels, cleaning the floor, and cleaning is everything. And as soon as you have cleaned a couple of hours of floor in winery, you understand how to design the next winery. Where to have the drainage pipes, etc., where to have the water access in every single corner. Of course, in these all Burgundy cellars, or when you have only the stones, you don't have that cleaning options. But of course, they are also using something different. Mm-hmm. They also don't have like all windows where the dust is coming in. So that's also completely different. If you have that old cellar, you don't have that exposure. You don't get that much dirt happen there, unless you are also Lopez Heredia, which is just like spiders everywhere almost. But that's part of the game. So hygiene is the best. Is essential, I think, because we want to drink from the clean glass, and basically that wine has to be also made in a clean floor and clean barrel in a way to taste good. But it kills a little bit the romanticism.
Yeah.
And this is again what color you're using, what color of tiles. Of course, the white tiles are the best to clean, and if you put like white tiles in every single corner of the winery, it looks like a hospital. And the wine is you don't want to drink that wine in a way, even if it's crazy good. So this is an architect. You have to think, okay, let's use concrete because it's easy to clean and wash, etc. You have to, it's always to evaluate. But you will see in Mosel, in Germany, you will see a lot of these hospital wineries like all around, because they had the trading room. You go and then Spätlese, Auslese in the front, and then you go in the cellar. It's like, you don't want to see it, and they don't want to show it because it's just made by this German practical aspects.
Yeah,
white tiles, clean, easy to clean, etc., etc. But it's not the full story you want to buy.
That's true. Yeah, you want the romantic part of it. So almost the last non-romantic question. So CO2 safety. So how do we account for CO2 risks during fermentation?
Yeah, CO2. CO2 is when the wine is fermenting, the CO2 is there, and sometimes it's really too much that it can't escape. So the most wineries in Austria are using the CO2 detectors. Mm-hmm. So they really have a warning lights. So if the light is red, so basically, you are like allowed to be there for a couple of minutes or not too much, or don't go with visitors or small children in there. And of course you have like by air conditioning, or let's say by piping, what is like trying to giving the way how to access that, bring that out, basically that CO2. If your old cellar, which is completely closed and has no access, where the air can go away, it's basically, it's dangerous. It's just too dangerous. Yeah. And I think this is in modern architecture. Just have first of all is the signals, detectors, the alarms, and then you have piping on the doors which open. And again, we are back in the terrace. The CO2 is there. We open the windows, the CO2 is gone. So that's basically the easy way, and it doesn't cost anything. Yeah. And of course, if you're down there in the cellar, that becomes a bit tricky. And this is the thing. But always you have, in every single house, you have the cooling and ventilation shafts, etc., and you just have to make them intact. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like I could, design something.
You don't have a bag. You can bring it down.
I meant like because it pulls down, and maybe you just design some kind of.
No, you have to design an airflow. You have to design an airflow similar to your workflow. You have an airflow which is serving what needs to be like turn on or turn off in a certain way. So.
Okay, good.
And this is airflow. In any way, is if you have a living room and if you have next to the fridge, and the fridge is sometimes giving by cooling down your wine, it's producing heat. And sometimes you just take that heat and put it in your garage, and your garage is at least two degrees warmer. And this is basically how the smart architecture is working with excessive heat somewhere and bringing it somewhere else. Back in the day, 70s, 80s, 60s, it was not really the case. But now every single smart house, the passive houses are always using, where you overproduce something, you bring it to give it another meaning. And this has become like sustainable aspect in winemaking as well.
This is my next question, the sustainability. So how does that influence? But you just answered. If you just want to maybe elaborate on it, be it temperature, water use, or materials. Or
I think, in winery, the sustainability starts with the water use and with the electricity use. Electricity is not for the light, it's really for the conditioning and for the fridge, etc. And I think these are the main things. And then again, the elevator, the pump, etc. But water and electricity are the two things in, I think, the winery. You can't reduce the use of water. You can think how you reuse the water for something else, which you have used. That's the only thing you could have. That's making sustainable. And air conditioning, we talked about it already.
Yeah. Now, let's go back to some more romantic area.
Oh, please. I love romance.
I think it was maybe 20 years ago, the very first time you spoke about architecture and wine, you talked about FX Pīlēns and Weingut 0, and you talked about how the architecture represents, or the architecture style represents in their wine. Was that the case? And it really stuck with me. I thought it was really interesting. So the idea, I think, was that this was like the more modern, and the wine was modern. Is this still the case?
I think I remember. I'm that old, but I think that is a good example, because we are in Wachau in Austria. FX 0 being like a super old school traditional winery, but still like on every single menu you'll see it. And FX Pīlēns is basically like half a kilometer further away, and is a super modern building. And also in the taste, you can taste the difference. The Knoll has the label, which is being designed for an old restaurant. There was no wall painting, etc. And they asked the brother or someone in family to design something. And they decided that Sant Urbanus, the wine god, and it looks really like a church priest icon, etc. And they put in the label. And I think there was a story how the German importers rang back to the winery, said, the wine is so good, but please change the label. And then a year later, the wine is still good and the label is so good, please don't change. By no means don't change the label. And the label is representing the winery. The winery is really small in this traditional house. You go everywhere. It's one room. There's no easy workflow. But most of the wineries don't have like easy workflow, because they have the condition. They have one room here, a small cellar here, and then you just go down these small stairs in the cellars somewhere and think how they bring even the barrels out there. You can't even go yourself through down, and have to put the barrels up there. It represents, and the wine tastes the same. It's like traditional, full of something. And then you have the crisp clarity, FX Pīlēns. And the Pīlēns is almost like a Porsche over the vineyards, is jumping out, showing here I am, and even the movement of the winery. If you Google that, you'll see it, what I mean. So there's a couple of shading structures, which is producing that jump, like overlooking the vineyards and being like the captain's deck on the big cruise ship. And so clean, so gray, so modern. I think also that the wine is tasting exactly that crispness and clarity is also there. Mm-hmm. And you love it or hate it, but I think that represents. And I would say these are one is not designed by an architect. Of course, that house of Knoll was built by an architect, someone, when they designed something. And one was completely, but that architect understood completely. Mm-hmm. And of course, this is new, super hygiene, clean, etc. And just compare these two. And I think, yes, if the architecture is representing also the taste, then the architect has done a very good job. The family has preserved also the house that it represents. And because I think that the wine label should speak about the style of the wine. The winery should speak about the style of the wine. The winemaker itself, we can joke about that if you buy a dog, the dog after half a year starts to look like you, or you start to look like dog. And And it is very true. It is very true in a way. And I think the wine should be the same. The winemaker should look how his wine tastes, and the architecture should look or represent the both together, and they should be like a team player. You see that, and you say, oh, they belong in one team. So and if not, and I think that's the case of a couple of the star architect wineries, the winemaker is like this, the wine is tasting like this, the terroir is like this, but the architecture is completely from a different world. Yeah, and they, of course, have been put here, and they're creating the hype and magazine covers, but they are not unity. You know, it's almost like in the church, you know, this triangle has to be hit, you know, and if the triangle is making like this, something is wrong. So that's the workflow, and the footprint should be like marriage.
So I wanted to ask, do you have more examples where you think that the architecture is representing the wine style really well?
First of all, the La Closerie, the winery I mentioned in Champagne.
Yeah.
The same...
I guess Preisinger as well.
Preisinger, yeah, I would also describe, by the simplicity of the labels, and also gave him the opportunity to change the wine style over the years, and the winery is still the same. It's a good question. I think there's also, let's not mix them. Then in Alto Adige, there's a Manicor winery.
Okay.
It's one of the most beautiful ones I ever seen. Made in 80s, 90s, a little bit postmodern, but it has also like, you arrive, you have just almost like a one small room, and then you have like a under cellar wall there, and also this brutal glass structures, etc. lining it. And I think this is a brilliant example.
All right. Okay.
I don't understand that logo doesn't support the winery, because I said the logo of the winery as it should be, but the winery and the wine is the same, and I don't understand the label. It's not creating a unity for me, for my personal taste, but that's from an architecture perspective, it's really one crazy.
Okay, so which wineries, before we wrap it up, which wineries would you suggest people to visit? For example, when someone goes to Tuscany and they ask where to go, I always say you have to go to Antinori, even if you do not drink wine. Like, I think it's epic.
Yeah, I would always say you have to go to two wineries in the same region to understand. Also, the same as you're in winery, you're tasting like two wines, you always convert. I would say to Antinori in Tuscany, and once you are in Antinori in Tuscany, you always go to Nitardi. Two Chianti Classico, so let's say Tuscan wines, because Antinori is not only Chianti Classico, it's everything, more or less. So it's really like big stage. So they had marketing is fantastic, architecture is fantastic. The wine is very clean, very commercial, but very good made in that what they want to be. And then they have a Nitardi, a super small house on the top of the the hill. You have to drive down. You basically give up. You think your GPS will bring you somewhere else. You give up, and then you arrive. And that's the house where Michelangelo has been living. And it's full of art, because the label is always a different artwork every year. The owners are collectors of art, and you see it every single corner. And in a way, you taste it in every single sip of the wine. You taste art. And I think also in Antinori, you taste the cleanness, the well-structured, the overpaid marketing, for making it taste exactly like that. But you taste it, and the job is perfectly made. And I would say in Tuscany, you go to Antinori, and the same day you go to Nitardi, and you see the two walls, and you don't have to decide which you like, but you understand that these two worlds are coexisting.
So I also wanted to briefly ask you about this famous winery in Rioja, which is, I think it was Ysios?
Yeah, it's made by Santiago Calatrava.
Yes.
It's the Spanish architect.
Because it looks amazing. Yeah. For me, it looks amazing. The reason why I went there was only the building.
Yeah. Of course, you are not the only one. I think many people go there because of the building. And of course, also, I don't know the story, who and how the workflow was discussed. But of course, you hire a star architect, and Santiago Calatrava is the star architect. He has the winery, a couple of high scrapers in Copenhagen, London, in Venice. There's a bridge. There's a little bit of in Dubai, of course, a lot. So there's a Calatrava, and he has a signature, and is represented by the signature. And in no way he has something which doesn't speak like him or doesn't look like him. Of course, if you hire a star architect, you hire also or invite 100 journalists to come and see, and basically they bring another 10,000 of visitors.
Yeah.
They're going to the winery, and that's of course the easy way how to let the wine be tasted by many. So of course you need attention. Ask Zaha Hadid, I mean she's died now, but star architects from this time, and you will have all the attention, whatever they do. But the wine comes second because they come for the architecture. You went there for architecture,
yes.
And then you discover they make also decent wine. Fun. But of course, the problem of Santiago Calatrava's architecture, it was so technically difficult. And you are in the middle of nowhere, you're almost in the desert. And you don't have that building infrastructure as you have in the center of Barcelona or the center of London, etc. And you have different set of tools. And I think construction, you can transport everything. But of course, the local guys maybe did not build it on that heavy, or let's say, detail maintained level as I needed, and the roof is leaking. And the winemaker, there's nothing worse than a leaking roof over the barrel room. So basically there's a rain into barrels, etc. And you have to cover again this and this and this. And this is of course the little side benefit, or let's say the negative aspect of star architect with two difficult project where it cannot be done. There's the same as I spoke, we have the German laws and we have the freedom of Brazilian architecture, and the toolkit is different. So that project can never be done by those guys, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And I think this is also the case there. I don't know, I have never seen in my life, but I have read, of course, this has been a press all over the world. First of all, when it was built, and then a few years later when all the problems started to arise. Yeah. Another press.
But so do you think in this specific case, do you think it is the fault of the architect or fault of the engineer?
No, the architect has made a plan.
Okay.
And has confirmed this can be done, and it's probably the construction defaults.
All right.
I think you can do it. You can do every single sketch of an architect. Always the question at what cost. And if you start to save on the tools, how you achieve what the architect has made, you make some compromise. And sometimes the compromise is leaking roof. Sometimes it's just a little bit more higher temperature, etc. But architect is not at fault. He was in charge to do something spectacular. He did it.
Absolutely.
He did also plan how this can be done, how the roof is not leaking, etc. And he did it. Yeah. And engineers also approved it. But the construction guys or the quality management guys did not their share of the part. When something is broken, there's a problem of everyone is involved. So they didn't inspect enough. They didn't insist that they load the bill too cheap, etc. I don't know exactly what happened, but you can't blame architect, but you can't blame him 100% because he provided the tools how this can be done, how this can be reached, and you decide, yes, I want it, and then you get your cost of the estimate and you say, you know what, let's make it a bit smaller. Let's review the style or whatever to make the cost a bit cheaper. But if you don't do it, you have that problem. I think this is the case here.
Okay, all right. So we're almost at the end. The one last question I always ask everyone, what is the one wine myth you would like to debunk?
If we're talking about architecture, a good architecture is not making a good wine, and vice versa. A bad architecture is not making a bad wine. I think that's the myth, in a way. So I visited the ugliest cellars in my life and tasted the most beautiful wines and met the most beautiful souls of the winery. And I ask why the winery is so ugly. You say, I invest in my barrels. I just got it from my father. I don't know how my winemaking will be 10 years, so I better wait. So I just focus on the wine. I would die if I have to work daily in that ugly room. I would die. I would just do something else. I don't know. Okay. But I understand that someone is a little bit more colorblind. It doesn't see that design problems, and he's doing that. So, but that's the meat. Yeah, a good winery is not making good wine, and vice versa.
So, the lightning round. I will ask you 10 questions, this or that, and you have to answer.
Okay, please.
Okay. So, landscape camouflage, Antinori, or iconic skyline statement, Ysios.
Antinori.
Okay. Tasting room overlooking production or tasting room overlooking vineyards?
Vineyards. And Both vineyards, but let's see vineyards.
Okay. Antinori, they're overlooking, I think, the... All right. Concrete or timber?
Timber.
Industrial honesty, like all the pipes, for example, are visible, or clean aesthetics?
Industrial honesty.
Okay. Historic continuity or deliberate contrast with the old?
Always depends on where you are, etc. But let's say heritage is always should be respected.
All right. Silence as a luxury or sound as energy?
Silence as a luxury.
Proportions that feel human or proportions that feel monumental?
Also depending what wine style you want to make, but more human, yeah.
Okay. Function over design or design over function?
No, function. Form follows function.
Okay. Design a winery. You would like to design a winery in Champagne or design a winery in Bordeaux?
I think I know Champagne better, so I know the workflow of Champagne much better than design, but I would like to design a winery in Perth. I'm an architect. Winery is my job, and the wine, the territory is the second job, but of course Champagne would be the first case.
Okay. Fermentation aromatherapy or zero smell perfection?
Fermentation aromatherapy sounds good.
Okay. Because sometimes when you enter a winery and you feel, that the wine is fermenting, I usually love it a lot. Yeah.
And I think that's a smell that is something alive. It's the same like going in a vineyard and seeing some bugs. You see the winemakers and they say, "Hey, look, here's bug, and they're so proud." And you're just like, what do you care? Yeah, that means I done everything. I cultivated the vineyard that they feel good here. Yeah. So they see that's their salary, the bugs. Yeah. And of course, if you enter the winery, you see the smell or you see some work. You want it because you don't want the clean museum. You don't go in a winery museum. You want to see if you go to the winery, you basically love that someone is barreling, someone is filling the bottles and just working all the time. In winery, of course, it's a big disappointment because most of the time nothing happens.
Yeah.
Winemaking is patience. It's just time is there. And there's a huge activity for harvest day, for bottling day. But apart from that is nothing. But that's the beauty of the winery, and making that aging so glorifying beauty is the real job of an architect. And that's the silence. Should be also nice, but the fermenting smell and everything should be that. So I think in the winery, you open the door and you say, I want to go in. And of course, I love the vineyards, and I would also love to see the tasting room with a barrel. But I think that sometimes it's good to see if I taste the wine, it's coming from that vineyard. From that vineyard is more interesting than seeing it coming from this barrel. Yeah. When you had the tour through the barrels. But then again, you have Etienne Calzac, one of the ugliest wineries. Please forgive me, Etienne, but your winery is not beautiful yet. But he has this one black room full with barrels, big window, and then outside you see vineyards. And this is crazy good. You see in the tasting room, the black color is working like a filter, is blending out everything unnecessary. You see the big barrels, you spend between them, you sample it, and you have through the window tasting on the scene the vineyard. This is essence. This is nice. Yeah. So then you cover like both answers. Yeah,
that's true. Okay, so the very last question comes from my previous guest, who you know very well, Jean-Pierre Durand. And he asked, what did you have? And he asked, when did you have Bordeaux for the last time? Which bottle was it? And how did you enjoy it?
Very good question, because I had my last Bordeaux, I think a month ago. It was a 95 Clec Millon. I loved it. Bordeaux is a wine I don't drink too often. First of all, I think that Bordeaux needs some age, bottle age. And then back in the days when I started to collect wine, I had too much Austrian wines, too much champagne, and never cared. But that's the bottle I received because someone was owning me money and didn't have opportunity to pay for the project. And basically they just covered the bill with the wine stock and I could choose it. So I chose that 95 Clec Millon. I kept that bottle, I think, for 10 years in my cellar. And I drank it in Venice.
Beautiful.
And that was super good, in a good ambience with the good people. and also some friends were there. And there was also, and that is an epic moment because in Venice, there's a place called Al Venice. It's basically a small ciccheteria. Ciccheteria in Venice is basically the tapas, a small bread where you have some fish, etc., toppings, etc. And Al guy, Matteo, was in the tasting with us in my house. And then he tasted the wine, and there was someone from Latvia brought the black bread. And he went so crazy. He created a dish just matching that wine out of what was on the table with the date and something. And that was a kind of that's why I remember that Bordeaux bottle very, very well. So Clé Millot 95, and that's a second wine from a very good winery. And I think that's another improvement, that Bordeaux needs age, and Bordeaux needs also a good society that know it costs a little bit more and they appreciate it, but then keep it so simple and just drink it standing.
All right, cool. And do you have a question for our next guest?
Yes. Let's make a tricky one. Yeah.
Yes, let's make it tricky.
But let's focus on call me, or let's say name the most beautiful winery you have been in the last year and tasted and had the full fantastic experience when you had almost had to cry because of the beautiness.
Wow. Okay. Good. Very nice. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And as always, I cannot imagine you wearing this hat, but I give it to everyone who has been on my podcast. So thank you very much for joining and talking all things.
Thank you very much.
Winery architecture. Maybe someday when you're jolly, in a jolly mood and harvesting grapes.
What I tell you, there's a one phase. That's a designer phase. And when you become a winemaker, cleaning the barrels, pressing the grapes, trust me.
Okay, good.
We look like this, and exactly. So still you have like a uniform you want that it tastes, etc. But of course, form follows function always. And you can't make wine in a suit. I mean, you can do that.
You can. You are.
But you destroy a lot of suit, and then also the winemaking flair. You just freak the other people around. They freak out. They understand who is this weird. It's just influencer came here from wrong. It's
cleaning
like
floors.
You know where to go there, because if you go skiing, you're like you know what to bring with you.
Yeah.
And you don't go in the same in winemaking. Yeah. But thank you very much. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.